Welcome to another episode of Jay Leno's Garage. We're here with a rather unusual car. If you haven't seen this car before, that's because this is the only one there is, at least right now. It's the Macross, built in Canada. Interesting car. Let's find out more from David Hobbs. David, come in here. Dave, what's your title at the company now?
I'm sales manager.
Sales manager, okay. And since there's only one, that's an easy job.
Very easy job.
Yeah, you sell that car and you're out of work. That's pretty much it. Tell me what we have here.
Well, we've got a Korean entrepreneur who loved cars, and he designed this car based on what he liked out of the 60s and 70s. Le Mans era cars, a little Ferrari, a little Jaguar, a little different things. Then he found Multimatic up in Ontario, Canada, who is known for their development and engineering work on cars like the Aston 177, the Chevy Series 1. And he went to them and said, this is what I want you to build me this car. And so they designed a purpose-built carbon fiber chassis that is based on their carbon fiber aluminum hybrid technology. And so you've got that carbon center section, aluminum subframes, and then a handmade aluminum body that was done in the UK. It's got full active suspension with different ride height. It lowers itself at speed. At the same time, it increases the spring rate by 30% for handling. And then in the back, to make it go, they started with the basic block of the Ford GT, the 5.4 liter. And then they took it to Roush, and he went through it from top to bottom, modified almost every piece with a bigger supercharger. And we ended up with 845 horsepower.
Yeah, you know, a lot of times when people build their own car, they look fantastic on the outside, and underneath is a tube frame and something. But this is not the case with this. This is real engineering involved with this car, because I know that name, and as you mentioned with Aston and some of the others. What does Macross mean?
Well, Macross was a name that Mr. Herr, the owner of the company, came up with because it threw back similarities to some of the Italian brands that he loved over the years.
Okay, very cool, very cool. Well, that's kind of neat to have the ability to build your own car. Well, walk us through it here. Let's see. So basically, we're using the block and transmission outlay from a Ford GT, but obviously upgraded with another, what, 300 horsepower?
Yeah, another 300. It still has the Ricardo gearbox. The suspension, upper-lower control arms are similar to the Ford GT, but all the active suspension, the dampers that are the DSSV from Multimatic, like on the Formula One Red Bull cars.
Right. You know, it's fascinating. We live in a time when people can just say what they want and design a car. There seems to be more one-off cars now than there were in the 30s and in the 20s when it seemed like that was more prevalent. But nowadays, because of all these engineering firms and being able to do things on computers, people can do this. Is this a car that they think will go into production?
Well, right now the plans are to go into production next year on a very limited basis. He wants to build 20 to 30 cars, and the final assembly would be done in northern Italy.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, right now it's done in Canada.
Correct, because Multimatic is based there, and that's where all the engineering and development work was done. Okay.
Interesting. Let's walk us around. Is the wheelbase about the same size as the Ford GT or a little longer?
Actually, it's the same.
It's the exact same. Okay. But again, it's not a Ford GT frame or anything of that.
No, not at all.
The only part that's Ford GT would be the block and the transmission. Okay.
That's correct.
What are we using for brakes?
We've got AP brakes all the way around, 16-inch rotors with 6-piston calipers front and rear.
Are there any driver aids? Is there ABS?
There is ABS and traction control.
Okay.
And you can manually adjust the ride height as well to keep it in the low position while driving.
Right. Okay. Can we let's open the rear deck here and see what we got.
Yeah, I'll just pull that up.
Oh, I see. There you are. Okay. Well, you can't fault the quality of the workmanship here. It certainly looks nicely done.
Yeah, and you can see the end of the carbon tub with the aluminum channels coming back to the subframe.
I recognize these are Ford GT pieces as well.
Yeah, for the dry sump.
Right.
That's correct. And then the inboard mounted push rod actuated
I like the oil where the oil filter is. Only trouble is every time you take that off, you're going to spill oil.
Make a little bit of a mess.
Yeah, you're going to make a mess. It has two filler caps, I see. Are they both filler caps?
They're not. This is for fuel. This is actually for electrical power, because anytime, as you know, up at
okay.
any kind of racing, they want to be able
Yeah.
on the outside to turn power off.
Oh, okay, there you go.
And then the wheels he purposely had made by BBS, the centers, for, again, a throwback look to the 70s.
Yeah.
And so he tried to incorporate what he liked, and he hopes that that carries through to some of the likes of the people that could afford to buy this car.
Right, right. So, and this would not be an inexpensive car.
No, it'll be $1.5 million car.
Wow. Okay. The doors seem really retro to me. That's the way doors opened in the 70s. You know, when you look at the F1 McLaren, even the new MP4, they open it that dihedral way. But that's just a matter of taste. And of course, you got the Le Mans style windows and all that type of thing. Obviously, that's air conditioning and all of that. Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, you're not going camping for the weekend.
Yeah, you're not putting much in there, so you've got...
Can you put any? You can't put anything in.
You really can't. You've got your oversized radiator, air in, air
that's
out.
a trunk. That's really not a trunk.
It's access to the ABS and obviously to the brakes and a few other things.
So basically what you have here is a Harley with 4 wheels. You're not actually, you can carry more in a Harley. You got the travel trunk.
Yeah, we have no bags that we can hang up the back.
Let's bring, Justin Bell got to drive this up at Goodwood. And let's get his opinion. I think he's got some footage for us too. Justin, come on in.
All right.
How are you? Everything cool?
Yeah, very good.
So tell me about this.
Well, I got asked by Lord March to turn up this year and drive this car. And as you know, Goodwood attracts the weird and wonderful from every era. So when I checked this out, which I did, because he said it's got 845 horsepower and there's one of them, I thought it was time to probably do a bit more investigation. But obviously in racing terms, Multimatic is one of the top chassis manufacturers, and the Aston 177, hugely, well, I don't know if it was successful in terms of volume, but a really well-built car. So I was excited to drive it.
I think they sold them all.
They sold all the ones they built, but again, still low numbers. But I was really surprised, pleasantly surprised, not only when I saw it, but when I drove it up. You know, you go up the hill at Goodwood there, you're on the start line, you'll see in the video, you're inside, you've had no practice. You've got 100,000 people. You've got trees and walls, and, and you can only look like a prat, and in someone else's $1.5 million car. So, but actually, it took off. It went in a straight line. I was worried about the clutch. I'm always worried about the clutch in something with that much horsepower and this much grip. I didn't really. I had the automatic aids, you know, driver aids on minimum, because that's kind of what you do up there. But it was really good. It was very nice. Brakes I used once, and that's just so I don't hit the other cars at the top.
Well, I know David said he drove it for 2 hours in traffic here in LA, and it didn't overheat and it ran fine, because obviously you're going with some proven technology there, that Ford block and the blower and the transmission. And what you have here is just a more dynamic chassis, and the styling is a matter of taste, whether you like it or not. So it's let's go through the controls here. So what we have tack, speedo,
and these controls, obviously with no real gauge on where they are, but the traction control you just leave in the blue, but it does have a more aggressive thing. The ride height, thanks to this active suspension at a certain speed, does drop the car down and stiffen the suspension by 30%. Again, fuel pump is really more for the development side. I kind of like the pull start. It's quite fun. You flick the button, you feel very much as though you're in a fighter plane. Obviously all the normal gauges. The air conditioning does work, but you'll like the gearbox. Actually, it's very precise. Like, it's still nice to get into a manual gearbox once in a while. Other than that, I mean, at the moment, nothing on the steering wheel. I think they're going to bring in more technology onto the steering wheel eventually. But in some ways, just flick that.
Okay, switch on. There we go. Sounds impressive.
Yeah. But that is such a trusted engine, as you say. I mean,
cool. Let's go for a ride. You know, it's very similar to a Ford GT. Obviously, same setup, mid-engine, about the same weight. Is this weight less than a Ford GT or about the same?
I think 3,400, so about the same.
It's about the same. Of course, you don't have airbags or any of that. the big question is, do I like my Ford GT better? You know, I probably do, because the Ford GT is meant to be a street car, so consequently, it's reasonably compliant on the road, it's comfortable. This, because of the suspension setup, and I don't know whether that's Heim joints or what kind of, how it's put together, but it rides a little rougher, a little harsher on the street. You tend to feel every bump, but you're going to do that in a Le Mans car. So what you have here is a race car for the street. I know it's, you know, it might be the gearing, but it doesn't feel like 840 horsepower. I'm sure it is. If they say it is, I guess it is, but I don't feel I'm getting that to the rear wheel, but that could just be me. Even dropping down, let's go to second, let's punch it at $4 grand. It's impressive. I'm not quite sure if it's 840. My ZR1 Corvette, I think, spools up a little faster. But again, these could all just be issues of mapping, and this is a prototype car. But it's also $1.5 million, so you're going to compete against Pagani, the new McLaren F1. You're not breaking any new ground here. Chassis and suspension done by some of the best people in the business. So you just have to decide what it is you want. Certainly is unique, and there's not going to be more than a few of these on the road. I know I'm not going to do a burnout because it's not my car. This is a one-off prototype. But like I say, I like we live in an era when people can put their heart and soul into a project and come out with a finished idea. And as I said, this is a prototype, and you know, there's a few things that need to be done and upgraded, and they'll make some changes to the interior. But keep your eye on this company, and we'll see what happens. See you next week.